Hi, I'm Phil Harvey. We're here at the Fiber Connect show in Nashville, and joining me today is Charlie Vogt, CEO of DZS, if you're British. Welcome, Charlie. Good to see you.
How you doing, Phil?
Great, and thanks for making some time for us, because I know this is a busy show. It's a fiber show. It's all about broadband, and you guys are all about broadband. One thing I need to kind of clear up right away from my own understanding is your acquisition strategy and how things are kind of coming together. So recently you acquired ASSIA, and you folded that in primarily as a software acquisition. How does that fit into your whole strategy for service providers?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that. I mean, you know, for a technology company that's been in the infrastructure space a long time, the one real big dynamic that's changing across the entire landscape for service providers is their ability to more intelligently manage the network from the core to the home and then inside the home, and being able to provide consumers with a much better experience in their Wi-Fi coverage with inside the home. And ASSIA has been innovating in providing network-aware, network assurance, and consumer Wi-Fi management technology for more than a decade. Yeah. So the transaction layers in very nicely with what we're doing with our OLTs and ONTs and our Wi-Fi access points and mesh products. So a lot of technology synergy, and it certainly gives us the ability to really begin to bring a software platform and a service-oriented platform to service providers, which is ultimately what they're trying to do to differentiate themselves in the market.
Yeah, as a point of differentiation in the market too, it adds more diversification for DZS, because you're suddenly, you have some network management and software stuff that you didn't have before. You're also in the components business, or in the optical sort of side. So how broad is your technology portfolio at this point?
Well, I think that our customers and prospective customers have to think of DZS first and foremost as an access networking company. So whether it's on the fixed wireline side, whether it's legacy DSL or where the industry is moving from a fiber perspective, or on the mobile side, specifically with the evolution of 5G and O-RAN, our technologies are really designed around being able to provide that middle mile optical edge access, as well as last mile access to the home. And now with the evolution of the software portfolio, we begin to really uniquely differentiate ourselves amongst our peers, and we're giving our customers the ability to significantly reduce their operating costs. I mean, if you think about what happens today when you have internet issues, the first thing you do is what the service provider doesn't want you to do, and that is you call them. I have an internet issue. And 70% of the time, it's something happening inside your home. Yeah. But the service providers are unable to really provide the intelligence to understand where exactly the problem is. And so with our end-to-end software portfolio layered onto our infrastructure portfolio, we have a very enviable portfolio of solutions now that can help service providers, one, better manage what's going on, as well as provide the consumers a better experience inside the home.
Excellent. Let's talk about the infrastructure bill, because that passed, and that's that's a reality now. And there's nearly $70 billion worth of funding coming to fund the expansion of broadband and to reach people who have inadequate broadband to date. How does that change your business, and what sort of opportunities does that open up for you?
Well, as you know, we've been sort of participating in RUS and the evolution of RUS and Universal Service Funds to RDOF, for the last 20 years. And the dynamics of RUS, Universal Service Funds, and even RDOF is significantly different than the bipartisan bill that was just passed. Fundamentally, you have $42 billion worth of government stimulus that are in the form of true grants based on service providers' qualifications, something this industry has never seen. And I get questions often about whether or not $42 billion is enough, and my answer is always the same, and that is it's a really good start, because we certainly haven't had this kind of support and emphasis, from the government. And the other unique aspect of this bill is that for the first time ever, the states are actually going to be responsible for the deployment of the funds.
Okay.
So historically, at the federal level, that's where most of the dollars were allocated and doled out. Now they're being managed at the state level, and there's a pretty significant effort underway right now in just trying to identify which states and which rural parts of those states have unserved and underserved. And there's this major mapping exercise that's underway right now as sort of phase one for the states and supported by NTIA to really allocate appropriately where those dollars are going.
Yeah.
So that's been sort of phase one, and we hope that this time next year we'll begin to see some of those dollars flow to a lot of our customers and prospective customers.
Does that add to the complexity of your business when you're having to deal with, with the prospect of having to deal with various state agencies as opposed to, just a single handful of contacts in the federal government? Or were you guys kind of already set up that way since you've got like you mentioned, a pretty long history of dealing with government programs and rural funding and stuff like that?
Well, it's very different. If you look at what's going on with the FCC and the NTIA, and now I think there's close to 30 of the states here in the United States that have an official broadband office.
Okay.
So historically, companies like us never really had a need to really interact at the state level, and now you have a broadband office that is chartered with managing and ultimately funding and justifying the dollars for their states, and will be very involved in the awards of those dollars to the service providers who are wanting to participate. So we've actually leaned in. We've actually hired some government affairs leaders inside the company that this is what they do all day long, is making sure that, one, we're participating in the right way, and we're doing everything we can to help the process.
Yeah, excellent. Do you want to talk about, I have a question about the digital divide, because that is one of the, one of the concerns that the funding addresses, but also just, I thought you'd be a good person to ask this to, because, we're at a primarily fiber show, but you guys are also seeing growth in 5G and every other kind of access in the network. Do you feel like the advancement of fiber networks, or I guess maybe the question is, how do we avoid deepening the digital divide when we're building out so much new fiber connectivity, and yet other cities and countries around the world are having to primarily connect via the mobile networks? I know it presents a challenge. Do you have any sort of thoughts on the assessment of how we keep from making it worse, even though we're in the short term making it better?
I think it's a great question, and not enough people are asking that question, because I'm pretty emotional about the response, and that is we have a unique opportunity to do it right one time.
Right.
And if service providers commit themselves to delivering fiber to the home, we're only going to do this one time.
Right.
And my fear is, the way the bill is structured, to qualify, all you have to do is demonstrate your ability to deliver 100 meg down and 20 meg up, which, by the way, isn't anywhere close to the amount of bandwidth that's required to do what I know consumers, regardless of where they live, want to do and need to do inside the home. And so, when you look at satellite solutions and some wireless solutions, they are a means to deliver, some form of internet to the unserved and underserved in some of these rural cities. But where service providers have the ability to actually deliver fiber, they need to do that. And I think that if the United States is going to spend close to $70 billion, and across the globe, it's already $130 billion.
Yeah. So,
when you look at places like Western Europe, where historically they've been delivering, they have, I think, 10% fiber-based services across most of the mature Western Europe countries. So they got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, we still have a long way to go, but we've got a good start, and we have the landscape and the construction and the service providers that have the capabilities of delivering fiber to the home. So for us to be able to deliver at least a minimum of a gigabit of services symmetrical, meaning up and down, that ought to be the baseline. And if there's anything I wish I could change with the bill, it's this qualification of 100 meg down and 20 meg up. I think that's the single biggest sin of the bill, and maybe it's because that the bill started 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
right.
And technology has certainly advanced over the last 2 or 3 years. But I do believe that most service providers are seeing this as a window to do it right, one time, the first time, and deliver fiber to the home.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective, because I do wonder how many service providers will see this as like a generational moment, something where they could completely alter the course of their company and their network and maybe their communities.
Well, think about it. If you deliver fiber to the home, you have an endless amount of bandwidth capabilities over the next 10, 20 years. So
right.
As electronics and hardware and software solutions continue to evolve, you move from this sub 1 gig world to a 10 gig environment to a 25, 50, and maybe even 100 gig, maybe something most people don't think about, but it's not too far out of the realm of service providers wanting to deliver 25 to 50 gig, over the next, let's say 5 years, just based on the way applications are evolving. I mean, you look at how much bandwidth is required for the metaverse and things like augmented and virtual reality and low latency e-gaming and sports. I mean, we launched at DZS at our headquarters. You have to come. We launched a new experience studio.
Okay.
And we've got just what feels like a lot of connected devices. We just have 20 connected devices, and to simultaneously use those devices in the house, you need a gigabit of data. Not
right.
100 meg, not 20 meg, you need a gig.
Right.
So,
was it patterned after your house, or was it?
It's probably prepared more off of my daughter's apartment.
Okay.
But it's a great studio, and we're using it as a place to really demonstrate our hardware and software in a real live environment.
I think that's what people need to see, though, up close, because I know everybody has kind of their own anecdotal thing about, my kids use this much and whatever. But I think it's like when you really do get into a live production environment and you see what, like, the next range of applications, VR headsets and things like that. It really is.
We've got an 8,000 square feet lab that's adjacent to the new experience studio, and what's great about it is, we can certainly have the real techie folks come into the lab, which is a working lab, to actually see the technology in its form, fit, and function in what would deem to be a central office, and then they can ring the doorbell next door, and they can walk inside an experience studio and see how the services that we're helping them enable would be delivered to their consumers.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. I think definitely I'll put it on my must-see list.
We'll have to do our next chat from our
we'll have to do
studio.
something from right there in the middle of the thing. I promise not to wear one of those headsets, though, because I think they look ridiculous. The last question is just about a quick one on supply chain issues. Has any of the supply chain issues that other companies have talked about and you guys have talked about, is that an ongoing concern? Is that something that's just going to be with us for a while, or do you see it, moving in one direction or the other?
Well, we're still slugging it out today. I think that we're in a recession right now. If not, we're soon going to enter some form of recession. I'm not quite sure whether or not it's going to be a soft or a hard landing, but I will say that as the consumers start pumping the brakes on consumer electronics and consumer goods that would require intelligent semiconductor chips and wafers, I think that could be a significant advantage to our industry, because what we do know is the government is behind the evolution of broadband services. Broadband's become an essential service. Service providers are committed to investing, and so I think that the chip industry sees our industry as a logical path to continue to make sure that there's availability, especially as consumers begin to potentially spend less on an iPhone, on a computer, on a smart TV, or even an automobile. I think a lot of the benefit that comes out of that is more availability. I think that, to be candid, sort of eases up towards the end of this year and into next year. I mean, we still have a monster backlog. I mean, we ended we ended Q2 with almost $250 million in backlog.
Right.
Just to put that in comparison, I think the year before that we had ended Q1, with less than $100 million. So,
okay.
I mean, we're up almost 3x year over year. So we've got to break down the supply chain backlog, and I think once we can do that, first and foremost, we'll delight a lot of customers who are dying for products. But
right.
I think that it'll make our industry pace at a much easier path than what we're on right now.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're at a very busy show. You're a very busy man. I'm going to let you go. Thanks so much for spending the time with us,
Good
Charlie.
to see you.
Appreciate it.
Next meeting in our Experience Studio.
Okay.